You are now watching Believe. Do you believe?
All right, people, Unfiltered Band back in business, and I'm calling this part 2 of episode 13. I had a life thing to take care of. You know, kids, dogs, cats living together. I don't like cats, though. I don't like cats. I always feel like it's bad, like when you tell people you don't like cats who love cats. Like, I've never had, like, and it really is a Jack Burns Meet the Parents thing, because I never really had a situation where in life, and I love dogs, like, where I've ever even thought, like, in my building, there are a bunch of dogs, right? So, like, you know, sometimes you get, like, people in the elevator, and you're like, they don't really want you in there. They're like, I'll wait for the next one. I've got packages, or, like, you know, like, because I've got my golden retriever, and they're afraid of dogs. And it's okay. It's totally cool. But I've never, like, been somebody who, if you're afraid, like, you don't like dogs. You don't like dogs? What are you, a moron? Like, I've never been that way. You ever tell somebody who loves cats that you don't love cats? It's like the craziest thing. Like, what is wrong with it? What is this, a religion to like cats? Is it some political, like, is it like your belief system? It's like, are you serious? I mean, you got to be kidding me with the obsession with people who love cats. It's like, you don't love cats. We are the people who love cats. It's a little crazy, but I took the dog out. He peed. Everything went wonderful. Now, where were we? You know, real life, people. This is why we're unfiltered. I mean, come on. It's like, you know, and it brings me, and I won't go too much on a tangent, but there are like times in my, like, I hold my tongue more than you think. People think I'm very outspoken. I am, but I hold my tongue way more than you think, because there are times where, like, I see people and I'm like, what the heck wrong with you? Like, why are people so conscious and overly conscious about if people knew what they felt, or like how they like really acted, like it's so terrible that society is that way. And you have to be like fake about so many things in life. It really is unfortunate, because I see people sometimes and I'm like, just be you, you know? No, this is unfiltered. I'm not editing. I don't have a crew here. Like, you know, my crew are here all under 8 years old or have 4 legs, you know? And I have a dog and 3 kids. All right. I want to get back into the first half and getting into All-Star. Dad jokes 101. That's what you do. But Cowboys fans are the worst, and that makes everything better. I want to talk about a couple of things here from the first half. All right. And we'll get deeper into All-Star in tomorrow's pod, episode 14, which Spilly will be with me. We're going to really delve into, I didn't want to touch on it much other than the snubs, but we're going to delve into the selections and the first halves and some of the great stories and some of that stuff. So you're really going to get a lot of that. But I wanted to hit a couple of different things here in terms of team-wise from the first half. I'm sitting there, and I tweeted about this, but I really wanted to expound on it here in part 2. It is amazing how much everything I've always said about the GPS being tied to baseball teams continues to really be true in terms of how you feel as a fan. If you haven't heard me discuss this before, and I've done this for years on air, and I think I did on a podcast maybe in the first episode, but I have always attributed Google Maps, right, or MapQuest versus the GPS to teams that have no idea what they're doing, that drive you up a wall and make you just bananas crazy in the wrong direction as a fan, to the teams that you will be more patient with, get aggravated, but kind of stick with, and you believe in, right? It is the difference between Google Maps and MapQuest. Like, they think COVID broke up relationships. I don't even know. I wish we had numbers on how many MapQuest breakups we had, because that was like a nightmare. I don't know what was worse. You people at me on Twitter, let me know, because I really don't know what was worse. I've been on both sides of it, but when you were driving as that person and someone's trying to, like, you can't look. It's in the dark. They're pointing to you. Like, I can't see what arrow that is. Like, I don't know what that says on the roundabout where to go. And they're, like, reading it to you. Or if it's worse, I think being the passenger, because you don't know what the hell's going on. You can't see it anyway. And even when it's there, it doesn't even make any sense. Like, this road doesn't look like that road. And by the time you say it, the driver is 3 blocks down. You got to go turn the whole way around anyway. It was a nightmare. But as a fan, the point is, when you don't know what your team is doing, it is a nightmare. It sucks. There is nothing worse. There is nothing what your team is doing. When you don't know what your team is doing as a fan, it is the worst. And we've had this situation. I mean, I've had this situation as a fan many times, but I think more so it's a pain in the ass, and I've discussed this since we've gotten to this era where everyone knows about everything anyway. Like, you know, all the prospects. Somebody used to sell you on, oh, this prospect is going to be great, and here's, you know, what he can do. And you're like, yeah, I just watched 7 videos on the guy. He can't throw that curveball. What the hell are you going to tell me now? Like, it's not like that anymore, right? Now we know everything. But in this era of knowing everything and where we live in with all of that, somehow, seemingly, it has gotten worse that they lie to you even more. If you don't want to win, just tell me you don't want to win. If you're not willing to try and win, just tell me you're not willing to try and win. I don't want to hear the Reds before the season sit there and you're on a talk show and the Castellini is sitting there and he's saying, well, you know, I don't. What else are you going to do, right? Remember that? He said, literally, he said, what else are you going to do? Like, okay, like if you can't root for us, where are you going to go? I don't know. I'll have the bat app and root for another team. I'll go get an ice cream, get a drink if I'm old enough, go on a roller coaster ride or a Ferris wheel. I don't know. Get hypnotized to pretend I don't root for the Reds. What the hell? What is this stupid shit is that? But they're like defiant. What do you mean I'm not trying to win? Like, you know, it's why players get so pissed off that they never know how much money the owners have. We don't know how much money they have. We're not paying their salary. I don't want to hear about any of that because you know how I feel about that. But, I mean, come on. It's like, don't lie to me. You broke down the team and punted because COVID and all of your other businesses and whatever else, you lost a lot of money. So you got to go and you got to put that money back somehow. You got to save it from somewhere. So you're lowering the bottom line here. You're going to go ahead and you make your margins easier for you to handle. So you're not spending a lot because you know you can't make any because the team's not that good anyway. And you got the Votto contract and blah, 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 whatever. And just tell me the damn truth. Truth is, we can't handle the truth. But I don't care. Tell me anyway. Right? The Orioles, I remember years ago, you could still find it somewhere. I don't even remember what show it was on. But I had people yelling at me in Baltimore for months. It's still, I bet you it's still there somewhere. Right? Like you put my name in Baltimore, I wonder if this thing would, I should almost try it. I wonder if this thing would come up. I did some interview somewhere saying that, and I would love if somebody finds this at me, because I'll forget by the time we get done talking here, or I get done talking to you and myself. But I would love to know how many years it's been, not to do like the pat on the back, like, hey, bro, I was right again. But it was a few years ago, and they thought they were close. And I was in this interview being like, to the interviewer, and I remember. But I was in this interview, and it's going to be a while. Like, I'm not sure you're aware, and it's okay. But this thing's going to take a long while, a few years. And I said something like that. Like, it's going to be longer than you think. It wasn't mean. I remember I even said some good things about, like, stuff that they were doing. They had gotten Alex Cobb, and there were, like, a couple of veterans, and they were trying to do, you know, the things that they got screwed with the opposite way when they dealt and for Scott Feldman and gave up Strope and Arrieta. They were trying to do those kind of things the opposite direction, and those are the kind of things you got to do, right? And you got to hang with a manager at the time, and this is what you do, right? People were killing me. Like, how could you say it's so long? I mean, have you seen your team? You're in the American League East too, by the way. Like the Red Sox and the Yankees ain't running out of money, and the Jays were at the time at, you know, even before they kind of plummeted, had just been in the postseason a couple of times, and it's taken longer than probably even I said it would. But it's fun watching what's happening with this team. Are they going to make the playoffs? No. And I remember Clint Hurdle said to me years ago, when the Pirates first got to 500, like when they were really trying to start winning for the first time, and they've been losing for a long time, and he had said something to me like, you know, he didn't like that, you know, there were ever any shirts or signs or anybody saying anything about being 500, because it's not about being 500, and I get that. Your goal is not to be mediocre, and if it is, it's only because you're keeping expectations low so that you can exceed them. Right? People always ask me, how are you? Mediocre, but working on it. I mean, because really, it's like, you know, do you want to know? It's like one of these, like, we should do a whole show on questions you ask you really don't want the answer to, right? In-law asks you, like, how's the food? Don't want to know the answer, most likely. Like, how are you? Like, do you got an hour? Like, that's why I'm not making this, it's not about whether you're man or woman or whatever, but people always get on men often for like, they don't ask you like, how are you or how are you feeling? And they don't want to tell you the truth. I'll tell you the truth. A lot of times it's because we know that's going to be 45 minutes and we don't have 45 minutes, right? So, and by the way, we know that not because there's anything wrong with you. It's because if we were asked that question, we would take 45 minutes to answer it. So it's just like, good. We're good, bro. It's fine. But the Orioles, it's fun watching what they're doing. It's fun watching the players and the team create an identity. It's fun watching the fans get behind it. It's fun watching the underdog kind of mentality that the fans have had to have for so long, and now turning it into this churning of 7-8 wins in a row as they head here towards the break. I think for them, it is a big deal to be 500. If they could somehow get to 500, I don't think they're going to end the season a 500 team. It's one of the crazy, shitty things about baseball is when you're not a good team, the idea that I don't think the Orioles should be sellers. You're not paying attention, okay? You're not ready yet, all right? You're more ready than you were. You're at the table. You got a spot, okay? But you're not ready for the VIP section yet, all right? We're going to ease you in. You got training wheels on that bike right now, and that's okay. But sometimes now you got to get off it, and you got to realize, I hate to do the Paul Abdul, but you got to take 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, etc. They're going to have to, if you could sell and get something at the deadline, you're still forward thinking. You have to be. Now, I want you to try and win. That's how I roll, right? But you're not ready to win. That's why the prospects are cool, parades are cooler. It's never just like some random thing you say about everything in life. It doesn't work that way. You got to be ready. It's about pouncing when you can pounce. You're not in pounce territory right now, all right? You're just kind of like dabbling, all right? Tippy toes, to quote Sing 2. That's what you do when you're dead. But this is where you're at, okay? You're not pouncing if you're an Orioles fan. But you're in it, and you're playing around with the big boys, and you're there, and you're a factor. I mean, it makes Jays fans feel like shit right now, right? So you're there, but you gotta, and you're in. When you're on the graphic as like 4 out of a wild card, that's what kills you, right? They make you feel bad because you're on the graphic, and I always say that's a thing. Like as a fan, like fans, you don't even admit this or maybe even realize it, but I think all fans have this psychosis I have from like when we were kids. The league leaders would show up. If your guy's on the leaderboard, like when you're watching This Week in Baseball or you're watching whatever, like he's on the board, when they show it up during like pregame, when they're batting practice, the home run leaders, like, oh, my dude's there. Like he's right there, right? He's on the board. When you're on the board and you're close enough in the wild card, scenario to be on the board, you start kind of getting bigger than you're out kicking your own coverage right now, mentally, if you're an Orioles fan. But something magic happens every time you go with the Orioles Magic. It's happening right now. You know what the opposite of that is? Everything the Angel fan feels. Everything. Here they are getting beaten up by the Orioles, swept by the Orioles, and you've got Ohtani who gets voted in to be a DH, gets selected as a pitcher. You got the best player in the world over the last decade in Mike Trout. You've got them both on the team. You have them both. I mean, look, it's not the NBA, right? LeBron can't take the I don't want to keep getting on Boobie Gibson. It's just funny to say Boobie Gibson. Boobie Gibson. But like Ilgauskas and all that, like J.R. Smith, Shumpert, like doesn't matter, right? Hey, look, Michael Jordan, right? We could talk about that the same way, right? What was B.J. Armstrong going to be without him? What was it Williams or is it Bison Daly? What was his name? Who was he doing? Well, Luke Longley and how many other guys? We understand. Like, this is the way it is. That sport, it's easier, right? I've mentioned Tom Brady with his receivers. We talked about running backs with offensive lines. It's not that way, right? Or hockey with a great goalie, right? Doesn't matter who's on the team. If Martin Brodeur is dragging you, then here's another Sergei Breland, mention, right? So it's not that easy in baseball. You can't just have 2 dudes and just carry everybody. But how are you having those 2 players and wasting them? You are wasting them. Mike Trout is being wasted. He being wasted. Ohtani being wasted. I mentioned this a few years ago. This is like 3-4 years ago. This is pre-Ohtani. But I actually went and counted. There was one year, they're both in L.A., quote unquote, because they're not. I mean, all the way down the 5 freeway, we get it's not L.A. But, Trout and the Angels were on either Sunday night at the time they had, or I don't remember the other night. Wednesday night, it was Saturday afternoon, right? Fox. National games. He was on 5 times. The Dodgers that year were on like 14. And it was like 5. How are we 5 times that he's not in the playoffs? It's 5 times? 5? That everybody could see him? I don't know what it is now. I haven't checked for this year on the schedule. Probably more because Ohtani's on there, right? Because he's more of a needle mover, even though, Mike Trout, we shouldn't have to put the lower third, again, graphic on the bottom of the screen, when he's at the Eagles game, telling you who Mike Trout is. But how do you have Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani, and you show us this horseshit? You suck. It's a nightmare. It's not Joe Madden's fault. It's not one GM's fault. Eventually, when all of the other denominators are gone, you got to go to the one that's common, and this is ownership. Ownership. I said it. Ownership. Look, Artie Moreno has been a good owner and has done a lot of things, and let's get all the disclaimers out of the way. But something happened after the Josh Hamilton contract that has never gone back. When they won at a high level, like every other team, you have to have surprises, right? Like nobody knew Adam Kennedy was going to hit 3 home runs in a big playoff game. You had Erod, K-Rod, Erod. Nobody knows what Erod is. You had K-Rod, who, had stepped up that year and, come up as the 8th inning guy, and you had Percival, and you had the David Ecksteins of the world. It wasn't all stars on that team, right? But you could pitch enough. You had Jared Weaver and Aaron Seeley and whatever else. But, even then, they didn't have great starting pitching. This team's never had Joe Saunders. This team's never had great starting pitching. But it is unbelievable. It's like they're like the Mike D'Antoni or something of baseball. Do they not know you have to pitch? I love Anthony Rendon. I love Tony. I know he's out for the year, but Tony Two Bags, I love Anthony Rendon. I do. All right? It's a shame for him and this team that he ended up with that deal. Not for his bank account, clearly. But that is one of the dumber signings. I didn't understand it then. I don't understand it now. And I remember and Spilly will be with me in the next podcast. With Spilly, we were doing a broadcast at winter meetings when that came out. Garrett Cole had been back and forth and back and forth with the Yankees and the Angels and not sure where he's going to go. You're going to go 8 years. The Angels are amazing this way. Adrian Beltre, if they go, I don't know if you realize, go look at how many third basemen the Texas Rangers had during the Beltre era. 1, a Hall of Famer. Go look at how many the Angels had. I want you to go look. Seriously. Go find out for me. What, they have 30? I don't even know how many guys they tried to teach to play third base, for crying out loud. And do you know why? Because they wouldn't give, and I think it was 5 and 4, but don't quote me, maybe 6 and 5. But whatever the years were, they were the 2 teams left on Beltre. Texas gave them 1 extra year, and then all of a sudden, Texas gets Beltre all that time, and the Angels had 38 guys that couldn't play. For 1 year. That was 4 years in the future. It's not like 1 versus 2. It's never that. It's never like, I'll give him 1 year, but I'm not giving him 2. It's always like Nelly Cruz. Great example. Sorry, Orioles fans, cover your ears. Nelly Cruz. Remember when he didn't start the season on time, right? And then he ended up getting a prorated deal with the Mariners and then staying with them. All of that was because the Orioles offered him 3 years and he wanted 4, and they wouldn't give 4. Can you imagine if Machado's still there, if Nelly Cruz, who, by the way, they were like, oh, well, maybe the ballpark's too big, it's safe go. I don't think so. If he was doing all of that every year in Baltimore those years, they probably still would have won. Don't want to pay the extra year. 4 years from now. But you're winning now. You can make money now. You can then take all that money you make. I know it's crazy. Take all the money you make and then spread it across. Okay, well, guess what? We probably would have made all these extra millions in the postseason. So now we'll go and take some of this money and we'll go ahead and we'll put it into what this dumpster fire is of this 4th year in this deal we didn't want to do where he's 40 whatever years old. But aren't we thankful we made the postseason the first 3 times? Are you kidding? You know how much money you made? It's like what I said about Atlanta. They made with the year after the battery, $430 million. They put 17 back in the team. We act like these guys are going to be broke, sitting there trying to have a Motel 6 leave a light on for them. No, it's not that way. The Angels, with the Josh Hamilton situation, it's like they just lost their minds. Artie Moreno didn't want to spend money. I remember, because look at their pitching, it's the decisions. And those are not just GMs, because going back to, again, what I said about Alex Anthopoulos in a previous podcast, as an example, okay? The GMs are not dumb. They don't get those jobs for being idiots. All right? They understand. They got departments and people with them. They know, right? They understand, like, one player is better than the other, right? They understand that, okay? They know that Pete Alonso is better than Travis Jankowski, just to use two guys that are on the Mets, right? They understand that's stupid. So when they get to that point and they know they need to pitch, and they got Mike Trout, and they got the decisions that have been made and the ownership play in them, I could go on forever. Let me give you a few to make Angel fans really upset. When you won 98 games, I referenced this in part one of this two-part here on episode 13. When they won 98 games, all right, in, what was it, 2015 or 16, whatever it was, with the Royals, when they lost in 3 games. Lorenzo Cain made a great catch, and then Aoki, like, lost his GPS in the outfield, and he made a great catch, right? When they lost that season after 98 games, you go look at that team, and look, they had Pujols, you had Trout, I'm not taking away, we're not poo-pooing those guys, right? C.J. Wilson, who everybody wants to crap on because he threw the 2/3 of an inning in Game 3 when Soch pulled him. You can say whatever you want, but here's what they had, okay? They had Howie Kendrick, and I'm not saying this is bad, but just follow me. Howie Kendrick, who was their most consistent hitter for the last 2 months going in and a tough out, and still Howie Kendrick. And by the way, what did he do years later after the injury with the postseason? And I don't want to hear, well, he got injured. He wasn't then. He wasn't injured then. And David Freese, who was the best hitter during that stretch of 3 games, right? They didn't bring David Freese back, and they traded Howie Kendrick, like, as soon as you could trade anyone, to the Marlins, I think it was, and then he got moved somewhere else. I think he was there for like 4 minutes, one of those kind of things. But, like, was it the Heaney deal? I don't even remember. Like, I don't even remember who they got because nobody even cares anymore. But how could you get there and then realize, you know what'll be smart? Let's take the 2 best hitters on the team, these veteran guys who have really changed our offense, who just won 98 freaking games, and just dump them both. They just dumped them both. Right away, gone. David Freese stays in L.A., did he go to Pittsburgh first, maybe, then to L.A.? And then I remember when he was in L.A. for a year, you want to hear the difference in L.A.'s? Here's another, this ain't L.A.? I remember, go look it up. Even Justin Turner was like, the first thing he told the Dodgers after the first year Freese was there, I don't care what, you got to bring him back now, like tomorrow. Like, how, I mean, it's ridiculous. Oh, we got a winner on the team, let's get rid of him. Then they traded Kendrick, and then whatever. But the pitching decisions, Matt Harvey? Didn't they give him, what is it, 2 years for $20 million or some nonsense? Trevor Cahill, Julio Teheran. Who was watching? I live here in Atlanta, okay? You don't have to live in Atlanta during the time. He's a really nice, super nice guy too, by the way. But sorry to shit on you right now. He's a super nice guy. But Julio Teheran was like, I mean, he in himself, like this enigmatic heart attack every time you watch him pitch, because it was like for 3 innings, he's brilliant, and then he sucked, and you couldn't figure it out, and the ERA is 5, but it could have been 0. Is it when the manager took him out? Should Freddie have done this earlier? You don't even know. It drives you nuts. You're in therapy. You got to get hypnotized to forget you watched the guy pitch, and the Angels are going out of their way to pay him money. $9 million. $9 million. $9 million. $20 million in 1 year combined between Cahill and Harvey. Boom. $29 million on those 3 when you could have spent that on a Garrett Cole type. So now let's circle back. Garrett Cole, you don't get him. You don't want to go the extra year, just like Beltray and all these other things. We can't do that. You're willing to go 8 years, you won't go 9? Like, I'm not going 4 years, and then I'm not going 8 years, right? You're not going 9 years, but you'll go 8. So you've looked into the future 8 years from now on this date, and you know what the hell you're doing, but then you look 9 years from now and you feel differently? Are we serious? But they didn't get him. So then what they decided was, if we can't get Garrett Cole, and teams screw this up all the time. The Orioles, by the way, and I had arguments with everybody on our air about this, and this is another one. I won this one because we know what Ubaldo ended up doing. But the Orioles 1 year when they lost, I think it was the year where trying to remember. Norris left and he pitched well there. Tillman got hurt maybe. They needed pitching. They had gone for like other guys that were higher up in the the echelon, whatever. They hadn't gotten them, so they spent $50 million on Ubaldo Jimenez. Like, if you have extra money in your Cash App, do you have to spend it on anything? Like, no, I couldn't get a steak, but give me some Arby's. Like, I don't understand that, really, to be honest with you. But they went and they spent $50 million on Ubaldo Jimenez, and hi, there you go. Buck Showalter's with the Mets now. We're okay with that. But here's a situation where you didn't get Garrett Cole. You don't have to spend them. Anthony Rendon can't pitch. Save the money. Go now. I know what's happened with him afterwards. Everything's hindsight. But Trevor Bauer was the next one the next year who was up, or whoever. Go trade for somebody with a big contract if that's the way, right? Max was going to be up, whatever. You can't be telling me I can't get Cole, so I'm spending $200 zillion on Anthony Rendon. I already got hitting. The problem's not that you can't score. You can't stop anyone from scoring. Well, don't worry. We'll get Anthony Rendon with all that pitching money, and then Hansel Robles will save us. The guy the Mets had, like, what are you doing? Like, I don't understand anything the Angels do. When it comes to pitching, it's like they have totally punted pitching. You can, in a fantasy draft, like as a just us, right? You can as just us, punt the catcher, will figure one out. I'll punt closing, I'll get saves later. Or something quirky, because it don't matter. You got $50 on the line or whatever the hell it is. You don't just, you don't punt pitching. You can't punt pitching. You cannot. I don't know if they need somebody at Disney to tell them. Donald got to come over here and quack it to them. You can't punt pitching. They've been punting pitching since the beginning of time, it seems. It is ludicrous. It is literally ludicrous. I need a deep breath. But I love what the Orioles have done. Love what the Orioles have done. But that's the GPS thing. It's like, don't lie to me about if the Orioles are going to take. Now, I was honest, circling back to funnel this out. About it's going to take a long time. That's okay. I mentioned this before in a previous podcast. The Cubs, when they first took over with Jed and Theo in that group, it's like, we don't know pitching in the system. We're not ready for big signings. It's going to take a while. But they were honest with the fans. Here's where we're at. Here's where we're going next. Here's what we're going to do. If you can't spend money and not willing to spend money, then just don't. You don't want to not tell a fan, hey, look, I'm broke or I'm cheap. I get that. But you don't have to go overboard. It's, again, going back to, I don't have to tell my in-law the food is shit. But I'm not going to go ahead and say it's the greatest thing. Is this hand chuck corn that I've ever had? I'm not going to do that. So if you're sitting there and you're a team, if you're really not going to go for it, don't tell me. Don't make Clint Hurdle stand in front of interviews for years if you're the Pirates owner because the ownership said we want a World Series or bust. Are you kidding? Like, you can't do that. You cannot do that. Right? But we've had situations where that happens. The Angels have an owner who's got oodles of money. Money's not a problem for you. I understand you made one bad move with Josh Hamilton, but it's like, a guy who got hit in the helmet doesn't want to go back to the plate again. I mean, it's time to face the fear. Because your problem is it has caused decisions, and I don't know everyone that, whether it was Billy Epler or whoever, right, going back to the Stoneman days, like I don't know everyone they could have had that they didn't do. And we know other things have happened with this team, speaking of with pitchers. But I would almost guarantee you, even though it's hard to do that because I wasn't in the room any of the times, but just think about it, and you think about like other things I know of relationships I've had, and you think about common sense, right? When you're making decisions like that, there are times where the GM is telling you, no, we should go for it here. We should give an extra year. We really need this guy. And the owner is telling you no. The owner is telling you no. I remember the year after the Hamilton thing, that next year, and I happen to remember something odd about it, but it is very specific. But Jody McDonald, who I love to death, who is a friend, and I love listening to I was growing up. That's how, he looks younger than me, I think, now still, Jody, if he's listening. But I remember being on his show. He was doing a show during the afternoon on Sirius XM, and I was out on the road doing, the spring training tour stuff. And I remember it was the year... I think they finished in first the year before, and I said that the Angels were going to stink and finish in fourth place, and like he and I can't remember who he was with, like everybody was making fun of me, and I think they finished worse than that, maybe. But I remember going to the camp the next year. It was bizarre, and I'm not getting on any of these individuals, but left field that year, Upton, who got overpaid, Cespedes, there were a bunch of others. Again, it's easy now, right? They knew not to get Cespedes. Like, they didn't know he was going to get lost or lose his diamonds or leave. No. They had Craig Gentry and Daniel Nava and a host of others, and we're just going to figure out the other two outfield spots outside of Trout. And I'm like, this team's not winning anymore. I said it on the air that day. I was there for a day. Now, that's dumb and ludicrous on my part. Thankfully, I was right. But you could just tell they lost it. Like, that go for it was gone. Like they were somebody who was out of a bad relationship and was never going to get a date again until they reminded themselves that they could still like have confidence, or in this case, if they could spend money, because they just were like not themselves. Like you're not Gentry and Nava, you're the Angels. Like it wasn't long ago you won 98 games. Like you got the best player in the world in Mike Trout. Disney's right here. It's a beautiful spot. What the hell are you doing, right? But nope. And by the way, that's how they started spending on pitching and been that way ever since. Been that way ever since. They lucked out with Bundy. They had a couple that but he didn't give up anything to get these guys. Like, what are you doing? A mess. I hate that. If you're going to win and try to win, then I'm behind you. If you're going to try your best to win, but you can't spend a lot, but you're honest with me, I'm behind you. If you're going to sell me a steak and give me Arby's, I'm not behind you. I'm way out in front of you because I'm on the run. Run, I ran so far away. I mean, come on, man. Don't be selling me a Mastro's steak, then give me some old wet roast beef.